Welcome back to another episode of Autodidactica. I'm one half of your host. I'm Glenn Clark.
And I'm Matt Paul, the other half.
This week, I'm just trying to this week. I don't really know how to ease into it. Our topic, our topic is a bit heavy this week.
A
Uh,
bit.
yeah, it's ethics and suicide.
Yeah,
Um,
so trigger warning.
yes, definite trigger warning. Because we're not
We don't hold back.
right. We do not hold back. That's a good way to put it. We have thoughts and we don't really filter them.
No.
But we aren't, so we don't even know what we're going to say on, we
Yeah.
have a general idea about the topic, we take some notes, but when it comes to just the conversation, we don't know what's going to come out. We don't know exactly what opinions we're going to be expressing, but our opinions are just our opinions.
And
And
we sort of we form our opinions throughout the conversation.
right, because we're
Like,
very open-minded lads.
right. Like I'll say something and then it'll be crude and rudimentary. And then we'll sort of hone it into a much more refined opinion.
Right.
And that's how I've formed probably all of my opinions and I'm
Hmm.
continuing to form them. So
Hmm.
yeah, big fat trigger warning.
Right. Because yeah, this topic, if you can't handle this topic, don't try. But we're gonna talk about it from every angle that we do pretty much. We can't warn you specifically. But
Nope.
yeah, so here we are. And before we get into that, how are you?
I'm good. It's been an okay week. I got a 3 day week, an unexpected 3 day weekend
Glorious.
this past weekend. So I got to go get tattooed on Sunday, then recover on Monday, and
Hmm.
yeah, so that was pretty sweet. So my week's been pretty short. My days are thrown off,
Yeah.
uh, and we the listeners won't know this, but we did take a 1 week research break,
Oh yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
So we and that was kind of nice too,
Hmm.
just to take a little because we were burning through these episodes
Yeah.
to sort of catch back up after the year that we've had.
Right. Exactly. We've had a crazy year.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, pretty fresh.
Okay,
Um,
good.
how about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been sleeping.
That's
Like
good.
I didn't go to work. I've had two 4-day work weeks too, but um one of them I was sick. I called in sick last week because I made bad coffee. And that was fun. I couldn't make it to work. That's how bad the coffee was. And then this week I had to go to court with a friend. So I don't know. I'm trying to catch up on my sleep. Apparently I'm not good at sleeping. And I mean, other than that, all is well, except my light in this room keeps falling down, my ring light for the sake of the people watching this rather than listening to it on YouTube. So just there's another warning. There might be a calamity and there might be swearing because my ring light might fall on me. I'm trying to keep my eye on it. Like, oh, it's getting a little bit saggy there. All right. Yeah. So that's me pretty much. Um your tattoo though, like for the people who are watching on YouTube, and I'll just we can describe it for the people just listening to the raw podcast, but you want to show us your new tat?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
I
pretty
got
cool.
yeah, I got me a scorpion, and I don't know, but I got an owl too. The
Hmm.
3 weeks before that,
Right.
and so yeah, it's been tight. Uh, the healing's great. The guy's a good artist,
Hmm.
so
Yeah, those are
yeah,
pretty amazing looking tattoos.
yeah, we're not done
They're
yet on
high
that arm.
end.
Yeah, not cheap.
Yeah,
Um,
they don't look cheap.
well,
That's for sure.
yeah, that's definitely the goal.
All right. Well, good. Good.
Yeah.
Um, now, so what else? I mean, are you ready to jump into this topic, or
Let's
should
jump
we
right in.
procrastinate and BS a little while longer?
No, I'm
Let's just
anxious. Yeah.
I'm anxious too. I really am. So, okay.
Do you have any opening bullet points?
As far as opening, that's one of those things I didn't plan out. I mean, I know there's things I want to talk about during the course of our conversation. Um, I mean, just I guess the premise here, um, ethics and suicide. Um, I guess it's kind of like blending those things. Like, when is it okay to commit suicide? Is it ever okay to commit suicide or to allow someone to commit suicide or to even assist in the process? Do we have the right to legislate what people can and can't do with their own lives? Um, that's kind of the angle.
Yep, that's exactly
That,
what I have written down here. Pretty much, I wrote
okay.
down just from an ethics standpoint, or rather, even a moral standpoint.
Uh-huh.
Is suicide fundamentally wrong?
Right. Right. Is it
Like,
even unethical to commit suicide?
right? Is it wrong to take for one person to take one person's own life?
Hmm.
This is the life we're given. As far as we can prove, it's the only life we have.
Right.
Um, is it fundamentally wrong to take that life?
Hmm.
For me, I would say no.
Okay.
I would go as far to say that no, it's not. For all the reasons that I could list, that it's not. For one thing, it's not my life. I can't
Hmm.
decide how they do it. How they choose to live or end their own.
Right.
And I've been curious about some things too. We just got done watching an anime, and
Right.
one of the things that was in that anime, the anime was, we mentioned it in last week's episode, Platinum End.
Hmm.
There's
That's
at
one of
least
those things we did during our week off. Was we
research,
watched that. Yeah.
and there are at least a dozen different perspectives on.
There goes the light. Hold on. I'm still listening. Keep talking.
There are at least a dozen different perspectives on suicide and the ethics surrounding it. The different perspectives regarding, like, who has the right to stop you, and
Hmm.
and what happens to your peers, and should that be taken into consideration. But one of the things that has always driven my curiosity
Hmm.
surrounding just death as a concept is life after death. What happens? Like, it's very
Right.
curious to me. There's a particular character in this show who wasn't necessarily suicidal in that he wanted his life to end, but
Oh yeah.
rather he
The
was a scientist.
uh-huh.
And he said, how did he put it? He said, it's just that my curiosity for what happens after death outweighed my will to keep living.
Right.
And that really, that kind of speaks to me a little bit.
Hmm.
That's something that I've always been curious. Now I'm willing to wait personally.
Yeah.
you
What's
know
the rush? We'll find out
what's the
eventually.
We'll find out eventually.
Because once
And
you're dead, what are you going to do with that information here? You
right,
know?
not unless my coworkers want to, my research assistants want to get a Ouija board out and try to have me relay the information.
Right. And then, there's the whole, in next week, our topic is actually, is there an afterlife? So
Right, so we're
we'll
just
try
laying it
not to
on.
get too far down those paths this week, but
Right,
because, then it comes down to, I mean, do Ouija boards work? Is that really a thing? Or is that you
right,
don't
right,
even know that you're manipulating it with your hands kind of thing? I don't know. Topic for another week. But,
right. Write that down. Write that down. Oh wait.
right. Um, yeah, have you ever seen the film Flatliners?
I I am familiar with it. I've never seen it.
I think they remade it in relatively recent years. The one I'm
Oh,
thinking
so
of
it was
is
an old one.
I think it was made in the 1990s. Um, but it was basically people they well, that was a scientific suicide program was what Flatliners was. Where I want to say these people were in um college, like they were doing they started doing these experiments where they would take turns flatlining each other. And it
Right,
was for the purpose of seeing what happens next and
right,
coming back and reporting it. So they would kill each other, like they do medical things to flatline, and then they'd resuscitate. And I mean, it was a horror movie, so it wasn't very scientific in itself. It was, a
right,
thrill ride, but just the premise of that uh kind of goes along with what you're saying. Like, is it unethical to do something like that, to experiment with death for the purpose of getting information about what happens after?
right.
And
And
it's like anything with scientific experimentation on living creatures comes into question, like the ethics of it come into question.
absolutely. And so yeah, that's just one angle.
Right, right.
That's been my biggest curiosity. I've said before that um I've had ideations before when I was
Hmm.
young, mostly when I was younger.
Right,
And then as I got older, it became less that I want to die, more that I wouldn't mind ceasing to exist, is how I've come to frame that in my mind.
right.
Because life can get kind of hard sometimes. But,
Yeah, yeah.
if I could just poof and disappear from everybody's minds and everything, I
Hmm.
mean, that might be a easy button to press when I'm in those sorts of moods.
Right.
But outside of that, yeah, it's never really crossed my mind to just end my life
Hmm.
because, the one thing that I can say about suicide and like prevention, if you will,
Uh-huh.
would be like to myself is just that it ruins all potential for things to
Hmm.
get better.
True, true.
Like
It's
it,
basically deciding that things are not going to get better and you're done waiting.
mhm.
Pretty much, you don't care if things get better 5 years from now. You don't want
I
to
just
live
want
through
the
those
pain to
five
stop.
years. Yeah,
I just want the pain to stop.
yeah.
Absolutely. And so, is it fundamentally wrong? I don't think so.
Hmm.
Um, I I'm not one to judge anybody
Right.
for anything they do as long as it doesn't affect me.
Hmm.
Like as long as it does not interfere with my potential.
Right.
And
If it doesn't interfere with your potential, you
mm,
don't mind if someone else commits suicide ethically. I mean, of course, you'd be
ethically,
upset that
right,
someone
right,
was gone, but could that in itself interfere with your potential? Like being that
not likely.
traumatized and scarred by someone committing suicide, I suppose, depending on how close you were to them.
I mean, it could certainly shake me up, but
Hmm.
I'd like to consider myself fairly resolute.
Right.
Like it would definitely not spark a chain reaction to like shake my convictions to the core or
Hmm.
anything like that. But yeah, it would certainly be a little messed up for a period of time following such an
Hmm.
occasion.
Yeah. I mean, hold on. I'm adjusting this stupid light again, trying to like balance it a little bit better. Okay. um, right. And I mean, you can say that you just from your current perspective, like where you are in life right now. I wonder if your opinion would change, like, later on down the road, like if it's your spouse who commits suicide or without any warning. And I mean, that's the thing most of the time. people who actually commit suicide just do it, and you never get answers out of them as to why, as to what was wrong. You didn't see the signs. Or what if it's your child who commits suicide, and just one day you're out playing catch in the front yard, the next day they're dead, and you never
Right.
saw it coming. Like, that's kind of, and that kind of like a Platinum End that we watched, the anime, that was one of those um things they kind of got into, was how it affected other people. Like, the one character, as I recall, was
13-year-old boy.
yeah, he was concerned about other people. Like, I don't know if that like, you've watched it twice, so
Right, right. So I have a little bit more, but I think I know just the scene you're talking about where he was helping people commit suicide is the
right.
scene you're talking about. And then
Yeah.
he also wanted to commit suicide.
Hmm.
And then there was this preppy high school boy that basically just gave it to him on the real and said, you know what? If you committed suicide, you may not have any friends at school or anything, but it would put a sour taste in everybody's mouth around you, and you'd be
Right.
bothering everybody around you. And the kid was very concerned with other people.
Hmm.
That's why he was helping people commit suicide because they
Right.
couldn't do it themselves.
Hmm.
And but he also, what he didn't like even more than that was inconveniencing people.
Hmm.
And that was enough. Like, he said the right words to him to get this boy to stay his hand for a little while longer.
Right.
And and it does affect. That's what the message was. Not that it has to be so blunt as you put a sour taste. You sour the atmosphere in your classroom, even if all those kids aren't your friends or anything. But it just goes to show that it does affect other people, even people you don't know but are somewhat closely involved with,
Right. Right.
classmates, coworkers, um, distant relatives, even.
Yeah, like, even people who aren't extremely close to you, like,
Mhm.
just people who you're a part of their world, you're a part of their daily,
Your
hello, how are
associates.
you doing, let's get to work kind of thing. Like, your
Hmm.
coworkers you don't know that well, you find out one of them committed suicide last night, it's going to mess with your head if nothing else.
Right,
It's just the whole concept of they were here and now they're not, and nothing was visibly wrong with them. Like, it's different when someone is terminally ill and you're expecting it, or someone's
right.
98 years old.
Or
You're not.
someone's 22 and isn't coming out of their house and quit
Hmm.
their job and took all their
Right.
money out of savings, or
Hmm.
you know no, nobody would be necessarily shocked at that point
Right.
either, because yeah, terminally ill, one thing, but like somebody who wasn't exhibiting the signs.
Hmm. Right. Which I think is most people, because I'm not sure of the exact statistics. That's not something I thought to look up before we did this, but I know it's common that if someone tells you they're suicidal, they want you to ground them. They want you to talk them out of it, because they want to do it. It's more they want to not do it, probably more than they want to do it. It's just that they can't break that thought cycle. But if someone has suicidal ideation that evolves into suicidal intention, and they're really, really going to do it, and they don't even care anymore, that's when they're not going to tell you. They're going to be sneaky, and you'd have to know how to look for signs, like they're starting to give things away that are precious to them. And they get kind of, I think, like, we did a YouTube video recently where I learned the term from you, pink clouding.
And clouding.
Pink clouding, and that's where they're just kind of in a euphoric state right before they go, um and just happy and giving things away and appear to have no troubles.
Right.
um
A lot like a honeymoon phase or something like that. They're giving
right.
away their
Right.
things. They're throwing a party and
Hmm.
they seem, everybody's like, wow, I thought you were in a dark place and you seem to be doing better now. Well, those are signs.
Yeah.
Those are all signs that
Yeah.
they've come to terms and are ready to go about it.
Yeah. But if you don't know that those are signs, you're just going to think, oh, I'm so glad that they've come out of their funk. They're just happy to be alive. I'm so glad. Then tomorrow they're dead. They hung themselves. They shot themselves. They slit their wrists. They, whatever they did, to check out, they checked out. And you had no idea. And then you kick yourself. Like, I mean, that would be me. Like, if I found you dead tomorrow by suicide, I would not have seen it coming.
Right.
And that, like, I'd just be trying to go back in time in my mind and just reviewing every word you said to me ever to try to just see how it's my fault. Like, how did I miss it? Like, we're so close. How did I miss it? Um, so I think it would definitely affect me if someone close to me committed suicide. And like I think it would be unfair for me not to uh mention personal experience, even though it's dark. It's very dark. Um, but as long as we're on this topic, I mean, I'm all about being completely open, because it's valueless to, we don't hold back on
We don't
Autodidactica.
hold back. No.
So, like, is there, I've learned things about the being suicidal from being suicidal. Um, like legitimately, genuinely suicidal, that are kind of scary, but also potentially comforting. Um, because we're talking about ethics, and on some level, the ethical debate, I think, comes in when we're talking about things like allowing suicide legally or allowing assisted suicide from a medical professional, which we're going to
Right.
get into. I've got notes on
Right.
Dr. Kevorkian. But when it comes to just an individual committing suicide, I kind of think for the most part, ethics aren't a factor. Um, I think, because like when I was in that state, whenever I got to the point where I was going to do it, because I've had a rough decade, pretty much. I have a very rough 9 years, with just, things kind of spiraling out of control, falling apart, the floor falling out from under me repeatedly. And that's kind of what drives that sort of thinking, where it just, everything goes wrong. You get so to the point that when things go right, you don't really even see it anymore. It's like you're not objective. You're just, it's kind of like you can't help but sort of wallow in your pain because it's so powerful, it's so intense that you can't break out of it mentally, even if like there's good things happening. Like you're dating someone, it's going really well, but you've got all this crap in your life that you're just looking at this as, oh, well, it's not going to work out because um I'm trying to fix this. That's better. The lighting. Um, because everything is horrible. It's like I don't have money. I don't, like, my financial situation is just falling apart. My house, like I'm going to lose my house, that sort of thing. It's like good things can be happening in your life, but the bad things in your mind outweighs it. And it's like you have blinders on. It's like you can't, like, once you actually get there where you're like, I have a gun. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna go. Like maybe I'm gonna tie up some loose ends and then I'm gonna go. And that's that. When you're in that mental state, at least in my experience, you do not see any other way to end your pain. And it's not your fault. You know, it's not like you're weak. It's not like you're a coward. And this is something that's not going to be, PC to say. But I think it takes tremendous courage to commit suicide. Honestly, I think it takes a degree of strength to actually pull the trigger, so to speak. Um, but all that said, the thing I think is potentially comforting for people, because if I lose someone to suicide, like I'll keep using you as an example because there you
By
are.
all means.
Yeah, I don't want you to kill yourself. Please don't. But if I found you dead tomorrow, when my head stopped spinning and I started putting myself in your shoes, I would remember what it was like the times I almost did it and only didn't because I was interrupted. Um, I was euphoric to a degree. Well, it's actually I've had a couple different experiences. I've had euphoria where I am blissed out because I know it's about to be over. I don't have to do this tomorrow. I feel good about it. I'm not, for that moment, I'm not tortured. And if I were to pull the trigger, it's going to be so fast, I'm not going to have time to regret it. If I jump off a building, I might have time to regret it. Um,
Depending on the
but
height of the building.
right, exactly. But I would take comfort in knowing that probably you were at peace when you did it. Um, on the other side of the coin, however, I've also had an experience where it was more like I was watching a movie. Like I wasn't really in control. Like I was just going. Like the pain just kind of took over my mind, I guess. And I didn't want to commit suicide. Mentally, like intellectually, I didn't want to go, but I was going to go. And I was powerless to speak. I couldn't say anything to anybody because just the impulse was so strong. But I was interrupted, and that's why I'm here. And things did get better. And um and that's the hard thing because you can't promise someone that things are going to get better, but that's generally how you see people approaching suicidal people who come to them with suicidal ideations and worries that they're going to commit suicide is you want to say, well, it's going to get better. But like me, if it's been 9 years, it's like, well, first I got robbed, then I lost my job, then my car got totaled, then my mother got sick, and I was a caretaker for 6 years, and then just the list keeps getting longer of all the horse crap, and people keep telling you it's gonna get better. You start getting pissed off at people who tell you it's gonna get better because you're like,
Right.
when is it going to get better? It's been almost 10 years and it keeps getting worse. It's like you lose your house, like all these things keep piling on. um but
Right. And you're not allowed to make decisions either.
right.
Like the decisions are forced upon you over and
Mm-hmm.
over again. And
Mm-hmm.
so nobody can really point to, well, you chose this life. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been able to choose a damn thing in the last 10 years.
Right,
Like,
exactly. It's like you have no control.
right, like maybe, I should have stayed in college, but that was a longer time ago than
Right.
now, than what we're taught. Then, my life was fine without college until this point. College would not get me out of where I am now. Like,
Right,
those, like,
exactly.
exactly. And so, like, you get those decisions taken away from you because you can always go
Mm-hmm.
back to college, but you can't go back to college whenever you lose your job.
Mm-hmm.
Can't go back to
Exactly.
college whenever you're taking care of your mom.
Right.
Like, there's all sorts of things that, like, you're just, the control is ripped away from you.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And and we've discussed before, like, in regard to your personal experiences, you've often mentioned, like, you know forgive me if this is, I don't want to turn this into an argument or anything, but
Oh no.
you mentioned courage and in going through with it, but you've
Uh-huh.
also mentioned several times that in your belief you have to be in an altered state, an altered
Right.
mental
No,
state, to
true.
be able to go through it. So I don't know if I can define that as courage necessarily, rather than
Mm-hmm.
like a
Just
false
being
sense of courage.
okay,
Like,
that's fair. I think that makes sense.
because I don't necessarily disagree with you, because one of my bullet points here,
Uh-huh.
it's actually a rather long one, and I think this is an opportune time to throw it in there, because that's what I do with my bullet points. I just sort of,
Oh, so do I.
whenever something
It's
good, they're
not,
not numbered by any means,
yeah,
but I
same.
wrote, if the stigma were removed, would more medically sound people choose suicide?
Hmm.
As in, we regard, because the other thing before we get into that, and it's in and of itself, my first question of the night was, is suicide fundamentally wrong? And you never
Mm-hmm.
really gave an answer on that one.
Oh, okay. I was working up to it. I think what I was going to say is you can't really apply ethics to it because
I
it's not,
agree.
you're not
It's
in,
personal,
yeah, you're not making an ethical choice.
because
It's,
it sounds to me that Glenn, his it's fundamentally wrong for Glenn.
mm,
Like, Glenn has decided that repeatedly, that this is
right,
not what I want,
right.
and like, I either need to stop myself or find some reason to stop myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, we each decide whether or not it's wrong for us.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's part of the stigma, is
Right,
that I feel like we're all sort of cultured into thinking that suicide is just wrong. You shouldn't do it. You
right.
should you it'll get better, like you said, like,
Mm-hmm.
it'll get better, and those sort of blanket statements,
Right.
and predetermined statements to get somebody to stop killing themselves, and then all help was withdrawn after that statement.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
so when we talk about, like, the personal choice, needing an altered mental state to even go through with it, because
Mm-hmm.
we know that it's not wrong, that it's not right for us, we
Right.
don't want to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and so we would have to be in a different mindset to even go
To
all the
think
way
that
with
that
it.
is the only option. And that's where you
Right,
get, you think it's the only option. You need
right.
someone to come in and interrupt you and show you that there are other options, that there are,
But what about the people that whose life, we look from the outside,
mm-hmm.
so we don't really know, but whose lives are generally fine.
Uh-huh.
They have a house, they have
Mm-hmm.
a good income, they have a family, they have all the material things covered,
Uh-huh.
and all of that. And maybe they're just an intellectual, maybe they're a writer on the side or something like
Right.
that. And they have just been pondering suicide for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And not to go off topic, but the main thing in Platinum End is you can become God, and angels
Right.
choose you to become God. And the people they chose in this anime, the plot line was, they chose people, not necessarily suicidal people, but
Mm-hmm.
people who have lost the will to live.
Right.
And so, if Matt Paul just hates the world, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sick of this world. I'm sick of its politics. I'm sick of its capitalism. I'm sick of the disparities between the rich and the poor. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sick of all of it.
You're just
And
tired. You're just tired.
not even necessarily tired. Keep in mind,
Uh-huh.
I make, like, in this scenario, I make $250,000 a year. I've got my house.
Uh-huh.
Maybe I'm a bachelor in this scenario. I don't want to leave behind a wife and kids, but
Right.
I'm a bachelor. I've got a good set of friends. Um, my life is good from everybody looking in, but I
Mm-hmm.
am not necessarily tired. I'm disgusted.
Mm.
Like, I'm disgusted with the state of the world, and it's
Yeah.
not getting any better. And there's nothing Matt Paul can do to revolutionize it.
Right.
Yeah, sure, I could join a movement, and maybe
Right.
over the course of my lifetime, I could see Roe v. Wade reestablished.
Hmm.
like, but maybe I'm just disgusted. And I'm like, you know what? I want out.
Yeah.
And, I want to just leave this crummy world behind because I'm unsatisfied. And it's not so much that I'm depressed or anything like that. So that's part of the stigma
Hmm.
that that is around here, is that if you are suicidal, you are in a mental state. You
Right.
are depressed or something like that, but that doesn't necessarily cover it all, because like I'm not
True.
depressed. If in this scenario, I'm not depressed. I'm not, I'm not in a manic state. I
You're
didn't
not
just, lose my wife and kids in a car accident and just want to go join them.
right. You're not
Like,
terminally ill.
I'm
You're
not terminally
healthy.
ill. I'm healthy. I have money. I have, all my needs met.
Yeah.
And so it's, if so, the original question, if the stigma were removed, would more medically sound people choose suicide? Are there enough people? Do you think there are people out there that are disgusted enough, basically? Because that's the only alternative. It's either you're mentally unsound or
Uh-huh.
medically unsound, or you would have to be disgusted. That's the only people that, like, because if you're enjoying your life, there's no reason.
Uh-huh.
If you enjoy life on Earth,
Right.
is the sort of thing, is life on Earth. If you enjoy it here, why would you?
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't. And I wonder the scenario you just presented of that person who has no discernible actual problems other than just the state of the world is that. And we'd almost need some like a mental health professional to weigh in on this because you and I
But we
don't
don't
know.
we don't do that here at
Yeah, yeah,
Autodidactica.
we don't know, and we have to own what we don't know.
Right.
um but I do wonder if having everything going your way personally, but you want out because the world is crap, like, does that constitute a mental illness?
Well, that
Like,
would be affluence by definition,
mm,
is a numbness to the outside world due to,
or
like,
apathy.
yeah, apathy. I mean,
Apathy.
the lack of caring.
Yeah. Yeah. But is apathy a mental illness? That's, I don't know. Like a terminal apathy. Is terminal apathy a mental illness?
Hey, that's a good band name right there.
Terminal apathy. That is a good band name.
Dude, I'm writing that one down.
I like it a lot.
Or at least an
But
album name.
yeah, for real. That's a good one. You're
Because
welcome.
that
You're
pretty much
welcome.
describes all the lyrics I've ever written.
Terminal apathy.
Yeah.
uh,
Because I mean, that's how I like I could see myself getting to 45 if like I made it and just getting bored,
mhm.
and just getting absolutely bored, and just like not necessarily trying to kill myself, but embarking in more like nefarious and dangerous activities
Oh,
that are like
right.
self-destructive. Like
Yeah.
if I made it, like I just for all the listeners out there, I have definitely not made it. So
Right.
no
Not
need to
yet.
worry.
Not yet.
Um, yeah, I'm still absolutely a cog in the system and have many wants and needs and human desires.
Hmm.
But yeah, like, so we're trying to, like, in the scenario that I proposed, you were arguing against by saying, would that be considered a an altered mental state
Right.
of disgust
Right.
and apathy?
Right.
Because I'm projecting there, like I am disgusted with the world,
Right. I
but
am
it's not
too.
enough for me to want to exit it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm down to keep sloshing through this shit show with my friends,
Right.
and it's somewhat entertaining, but um, but then you have to diagnose every single mental state as
Right.
an altered mental state, because it's a mental state different from your own.
Hmm.
I'm talking about like you cannot diagnose Matt's mental state as an altered mental state to Glenn.
Mhm.
Comparatively, it's an altered mental state to Glenn. My mental state is different than your mental state.
Uh-huh.
But like an altered mental state, I would consider to be what is an observed difference from the norm for that individual.
Mhm.
But if I've been in this
Okay.
mental state for 10 years consistently, and
Right.
like the world's not getting better, we're still implanting dictators in third world countries and watching the downfall of democracy in our own,
Mhm.
and it's just not getting any better. I'm just like, you know what? Out, boom, like, and I'm done.
Right.
I've been thinking about it for the last 10 years. Not
Mhm.
necessarily suicidal, just kind of waiting for things to get better. But
Right.
suicidal all the while. It's contradictory, what I just said,
Right.
but the stigma is not the same. You would not be looking at the same signs.
Mhm.
Like
Oh,
people would be
true.
looking for a
True.
reason for me at the end of the day. They'd be looking for a reason. Why did Matt do it? And they'd never know.
Mhm.
They'd never know because yeah, I've just been disgusted for the last decade of my life. I'm in my 40s, like, whatever. I'm just over it all.
Mhm.
And but the stigma would be to paint me as some sort of depressed individual after it was
Right.
all done, and they'd be looking for a reason, but there never was one,
Mhm.
as far as they could perceive, because the stigma for suicide is you have to be depressed, you have to be manic, you
Right.
have to be in a state, you have to have endured a tremendous loss.
Mhm.
And so like for the people out there that like just want to die, they're
Right.
not necessarily depressed.
Right. They're done. Like they
Right, they're
just
done.
they've done
But the
they've
stigma.
seen it, done it. Yeah, time I
Mm-hmm,
don't want to keep riding this roller coaster.
exactly.
Okay, and like I was just thinking like because animals have survival instincts. So that would maybe if you can just so easily and callously without being in pain turn your back on your some of your core instincts, would that mean something is broken? But I'm also at the same time contradictorily thinking, does higher intelligence lead to suicidal ideation?
I believe so.
Because it's not necessarily that something is broken. It's that you're so smart that
You're evolved.
unlike a dog, a dog has a bad day, gets its leg cut off, isn't like, well, I'm going to just run into traffic and die. You know,
Again.
it's like, yeah, again, as a dog runs into traffic and dies, it's accidental. They don't understand that
Right.
they're going to get killed.
First time they lost a leg, second time they're trying to finish it off
Right. A dog isn't like just sitting in the house smoking and like drinking and like, God,
with a
he
shotgun in
leaves me
its mouth.
alone all day, every
Like,
day. I just want to die. Yeah,
yeah,
it's not a dog. You don't come home and find your dog shot itself in the mouth. Like,
yeah.
no,
Cobained himself.
right. But a human is arguably the most intelligent animal on earth, with the possible rival of whales, who may be as intelligent as we are,
Yeah, whales are
but
aliens.
they don't have thumbs, so they can't do as many things. They don't have as many options.
Freaking losers.
Right. Whales, they're so smart. If they're so smart, why don't they have thumbs?
Yeah, grow some thumbs and then come talk to me.
Right. But I guess what I'm getting at is it is it just kind of a part of the human condition that when things get bad, we are smart enough to know we don't have to
Continue.
keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we are unimpressed with the world, which
No,
other
and you brought up
animals can't do, other animals can't really contemplate the state of the world and whether or not they want to participate, whether they're
right.
oppressed or not. We can. So maybe nothing is
Like
broken when you commit suicide that way. It's just that is a side effect of um, heightened intelligence.
yeah, no, and it's just like it's like the last white rhinoceros.
Uh huh.
He doesn't know he's the last one on Earth.
Yeah, he's got no idea.
He's got no idea. he can't, he's not intelligent enough to be like, well, there's no point in existing now.
Right.
I can't
Right.
have any kids anymore. My species is extinct.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, it dies with me. It's
dies with me
he can't be bothered to be
because
depressed by that. He doesn't have the intellect.
that was one of the bullet points that I wrote down was animal suicide. And
Interesting.
and there are slim documentations of
Dolphins.
suicide in the animal continue.
Hmm.
Very, very, none has been documented. The only documentation that we have of dolphin suicide is, surprisingly enough to learn, the uh, the main dolphin in the Flipper series allegedly
Really?
committed suicide.
Huh.
Um,
Flipper committed suicide.
Flipper committed suicide.
Story time. What?
Another example of an alleged case of animal suicide is the case of the dolphin, which most often portrayed Flipper in the 1960s television show.
Uh-huh.
According to Trainer, in the film The Cove, Kathy the dolphin suffocated herself before him. The veracity or accuracy of this case has not been established in rigorous scientific or objective terms. Similarly, a male bottlenose dolphin named Peter, who was a subject in a series of experiments led by John C. Lilly, a
Hmm.
neuroscientist, and Margaret Ho Lovat, a volunteer naturalist, apparently stopped breathing after it was moved into a lab in a different location, separated from Lovat. So yeah, but no, the first line of this article was that let's see,
Like the whale, like the dolphin, I want to say, and this could just be horse crap that I read on the internet somewhere. I definitely didn't research this, but I read before about a dolphin who allegedly committed suicide because the trainer was having sex with it, and they found out, the higher ups found out, and because dolphins are intelligent, they have sex for pleasure. Dolphins are
right,
hoes. Dolphins are hoes. But
right.
when they took the trainer away, the dolphin committed suicide. I don't know
Mm.
if that's true, but if you actually look this stuff up,
A lot of
I
the
would
stuff,
think that would be in your list if that were actually
right?
something that had
No,
happened.
I can't find it in the article where I read it, but it was indicating that um like suicide in animals is an indication of higher intelligence.
Okay, see, and that's what I was about to say.
Like,
Like dolphins pass the sentience test. They can understand
right.
what a mirror is and that they're looking at
An animal
themselves.
would need to be aware of its own existence
Hmm.
as distinct from other individuals. It would
Right.
need to have an understanding of mortality and
Hmm.
sufficient uh, enough for it to realize that it is a possibility.
Right.
And to choose death for itself, the animal has to know about itself and that it can die.
Right.
It would also need some concept of the future in order to intend to die.
Hmm.
And so, like, some people have pointed to dogs and cats like refusing to eat.
Mm.
And now that's borderline
Well,
suicidal, but people have labeled it as not being suicidal because they don't understand the consequences of their actions.
right,
Like,
exactly.
because animals refuse to eat when they're grieving or
Uh-huh.
sad,
Right, right. And
but
that's
they don't understand
grief.
that if they don't eat, they will die.
Yeah,
They
they
don't
don't have an
understand.
appetite. Like
Right.
when you're in a state of grief, if you're in a state of depression,
You realize that three
you
days has gone by and you haven't eaten anything.
right, exactly, but you're not necessarily doing it deliberately. You just don't have you don't have an appetite. You don't
Right.
You're just depressed. All of your all of your drives are depressed. Um so, like I met a guy in the madhouse when I was um he said his dog committed suicide. I don't know that
Hmm.
that's the case, but I wasn't there. But
Hmm.
what he was describing was probably just an accident, like a dog trying to jump over a fence and it going horribly wrong. But
Right.
yeah, it's
Because
because
yeah, I don't think dogs can commit
I
suicide. I
don't
don't
think
think they
so
have the
either.
capacity for it.
Not willfully. They can
Right.
accidentally commit suicide, like running into traffic, but they
Right.
don't know. Like my dog, my both of my dogs I had the longest got hit by cars, but one of them lived. Barney, my the dog I grew up with, and he would run off, and to him it was a game. He was running, and we were chasing him. And there was this one time that Barney ran away, and I thought it was over because he ran right out into the street, Adelia Road, busy street, and I'm like, oh no, no. And a car came to a screeching halt, barely avoided hitting him. Barney was so oblivious to the concept of just the peril that he was in that he just walks around the car, starts sniffing it, hikes his leg, takes a piss on the tire. Like, and that's when I went and grabbed him. He had no concept that his
Right.
life was in danger. He had no
Right.
idea that he had just narrowly escaped death. He was just calmly, oh, I think I'll pee on this.
Right. So it hasn't necessarily been proven that animals can commit suicide.
Uh-huh.
And it would be an impossible study to find out.
Right. Well, I
Like,
don't, it would be hard. It would be challenging.
it would be impossible. You'd have to create conditions under which an animal would want to commit suicide.
That's true. That's true. You have to
And
drive your dog to suicide. How can I make your life
right,
hell? Yeah, probably
right,
that would be
exactly.
unethical that would be very
That would be
unethical.
completely unethical, and that would
Uh-huh.
be the hubris of man right there.
Right.
And so the only other, most of the other examples of animal suicide have to do with colony based insects,
Ah,
but
interesting.
like some species of social insects will die by suicide in an act of altruism through autophysis. The insects will sacrifice themselves if the colony is in danger to alert the colony of danger.
Huh.
Or if they become diseased, they will sacrifice themselves to prevent the colony from becoming diseased. Carpenter ants and some species of termite will rupture glands and expel a sticky, toxic substance thought to be an aliphatic compound in a process called autophysis. And so they basically kill themselves if they get sick, or they will kill themselves as a sort of alarm bell to the rest of the colony
Uh-huh.
if they see a threat approaching. And so
Okay.
that's the only other, but insects are so interesting in that regard, colony minded
Right.
insects, because ants have already been proven to be like colony minded, bees
Right.
as
They have a
well.
hive mind. Yeah.
They have a hive mind. And so that's already interesting enough as it is, but not this topic. They're killing themselves to basically be like, oh, ant 0145 has gone offline and is not reported in for 5 seconds. He must be dead. There must be something going on at that
Right.
at
They're
that location.
so kind of like the Borg on Star Trek, where it's like these people have been assimilated and they're cyborgs and they're just cogs. Like each body
Mm-hmm.
is part of the same. It's almost like the Borg is one entity with
Right.
numerous bodies. So is that even suicide? I
Well,
mean,
I mean,
technically the body dies of that ant or whatever whichever insect.
did that does that ant have a
Like,
soul?
okay, see, and there we go. That's
Yeah, there we
that
go. That's
next
next
week.
week.
Next week,
Next
let's
week.
but do ants have souls?
Do ants have souls? Tune in next
Like,
time.
but you know, soul or not, is that the same kind of suicide? Like, it's ethical. Arguably, it is ethical to sacrifice yourself for the greater good of your colony. But do they really make a conscious choice? Or is it purely instinct? Or is it purely a hive mind kind of thing? Like, but is
Right,
it just
right.
there? If it's your instinct, if an ant, and I don't know enough about it, I'm fascinated by ants and bees.
Dude, let's start an
Um,
ant farm.
because see,
We
I
can
don't
talk
know,
about it off.
that's a big commitment. but just that they appear to be fairly intelligent
in
if
a
you really
different way.
in a different way. Like they have different priorities. They
Ants
have
would be exploring the solar system right now if they had our intelligence.
right, like that anthill I had out in front of the house in
Oh yeah,
Dallas.
yeah.
That
That's a
I
very
just I wouldn't.
large. That was the Mount Rush.
Oh, I'm losing you. Are you there? You're frozen up. I'll wait.
Yeah, I lost you too for a
Okay,
second.
there you are. All right,
Oh,
so
internet connection unstable. Okay, I got the message.
so you said that was the Mount.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, good.
Mount Rushmore.
Mount
Yeah.
Rushmore. Like that anthill endured for
Had like
years.
2,000 generations of ant.
Yeah. Um, so it's
It was a
surprising.
feature of that lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising they didn't launch a space program from that anthill. They had the
They
time to
probably
do
had
it. Our friend
they probably
Chase
had
went off on that one day and it was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, it's again, I don't know enough about ants to know if they're making an ethical decision or if it's just an instinctive drive. Or ants, you weren't talking about ants committing suicide. I honestly forgot what insect you said did that to alert the
uh
colony.
no, that was ants.
It
That was
was
ants.
okay. So, I don't know, is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
ethical or is that instinct?
Carpenter ants.
Carpenter ants.
Yeah.
Okay. But they do, I mean,
Yeah. No, and
technically
so
commit
like
suicide.
now do they, or is that the hive telling them to kill themselves?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Like
We can't
that's
really
assisted
gauge.
suicide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um yeah, we're almost all the way through my bullet points.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, what else you got?
The other one that I had, and this one's interesting because like suicide is not a crime. It's
Mm.
not technically a crime, at least here in the United States and most states, it is
Hmm.
not considered a crime.
Right. Most states, but the laws do vary
They
from
do
state to
vary.
state.
Now, the thing is like if you do attempt suicide enough, guess where you end up? You end up in the loony bin.
Oh, right.
Like
Right.
if you like attempt suicide to the point where you need medical intervention
Hmm.
enough times, you are no longer considered a part of society and
Right. No.
you can end up. And so it sort of my last bullet point is it a person's right to commit suicide? Like is it a person's right? Now like
Like, is it an inalienable right? Is
right.
it the pursuit of happiness?
I think it
Like, do
stops
we
being a right. I think it stops being a right whenever you keep screwing it up. like,
like when you can't get
like
it when you can't get it done?
you
Like
can't get
you
it
just
done. You're causing problems for everybody around you. You've tried 3 times, Helen. Like
you're not good at this. We
you're not good at this, and we can't do it for you.
uh-huh.
So here's your padded vest with your name on it.
Hmm.
Get into the soft cushioned room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And tell us all about it. It's yeah. It's funny because one time it's not funny.
it's
It's
hilarious. No.
well, yeah, no, like what I'm thinking about was it's noteworthy, I suppose. But when you're talking about people's rights, because one of the many, many times I was at the emergency room with my mother during that 6 years that I was her caretaker, um, there was an old lady who, I overheard a little of the conversation, but she had just kind of jokingly said, "Oh, well, apparently I just need to go home and kill myself," when after talking to the doctors. And so they called the police.
Oh God.
Yeah, and the police had to come in and talk to this lady, and she was like, "For the love of God, I was kidding. It was clearly a joke. It was maybe a joke in poor taste, but it was a joke." And the police were like, we know, but we have to do this now. It's the law. We have to go through this process now because you said it, and they are obligated to call the police if you suggest you might commit suicide. Like, and I thought that was crazy. I just because, but also at the same time, I kind of, you know, you can't leave it to the nurses to determine who's joking and who isn't and get it right every time. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like when I was working with youth and families for 8 years, there were certain lines that confidentiality did not protect legally, where if I did not report suspicion of a kid being abused at home, just the suspicion, I have to report it or I'm complicit. It's, you know, there's no legally, there is no choice. You have to, because just on the, you know, you might be able to determine, oh well, they're not really being abused or whatever, but you can't leave it to individuals to do that because not everybody's going to have the same capacity for discernment. You know, if you get it wrong, a kid goes home and gets beaten up or raped. And so I understand on that level why those laws exist, but it is kind of asinine for the people who are clearly joking and who are saying, I was just kidding, but the cops still have to come in. So it's like you don't have a right, really, to even joke about suicide in certain places.
True. Yeah. Yeah. No, and see, like, I'd probably call,
Mm-hmm.
like if I was the nurse,
I think legally you would have to.
yeah, I'd do it. Like, I'd probably laugh at the joke and then still call.
That's funny. I'm
Like,
calling the cops.
yeah, yeah,
But good one, ma'am. Tell it to the cops
yeah.
when they
No,
get here. That's
I'm sure they'll find it hilarious. And so, something you said sparked another little question that I have as well.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know enough about this. I tried googling something, but I don't have the time to
Right.
both interact with your opinions and statements while simultaneously reading a freaking 3-page article.
Right. Right.
But I've got the gist of it, and it's so basically, uh, should suicide be included in life insurance?
Hmm.
Like,
Oh, you
most
know,
life insurance policy, all life insurance policies, that's the thing that I'm able to just discertain from this article right now. All of them hold out the payout
yeah,
if the person commits suicide.
right. And that's something I only recently
Uh,
learned. Um, that if you commit suicide, your beneficiary gets nothing
yeah,
from your life insurance. At least here. I mean, people can listen to this from anywhere. We're talking from the
and I have to
United
do more
States,
research. Yeah,
Texas. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we're not experts on any of the topics we so far have talked about. Um, and we own that for sure. But yeah, you don't get a payout, and should you? I kind of think,
oh, wait
yeah,
a minute. Okay. Some of them do pay,
do
as long
they?
as you make it through the exclusionary period. As in, you can't just take out a $2 million life insurance
And
policy
then
on
go kill
yourself
yourself.
and then go kill yourself. It won't work. Um, so yeah. Um,
So if you've
it does
had your
work in some
insurance
cases.
for a particular amount of
For
time, it'll pay
it
out.
can it'll pay out, but it depends on the policy. It
Mm-hmm.
depends entirely on the policy. Uh, yeah, can still receive life insurance policy payout if the policy holder dies by suicide. However, there are limitations. Bankrate breaks down how okay, that's just plugging their own website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, life insurance life insurance covers a policyholder's suicidal death in many cases.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So that's worth some more
Okay,
research.
I didn't know that.
Um, yeah, I didn't know that either. Um, yeah, well, and most of the time when you see it in movies and media, it's somebody that's trying to commit suicide, so they hire somebody to kill them to make it not look
Right,
like a
right.
suicide, so that way their wife and kids can get a $2 million payout.
Hmm.
And that's how you see it portrayed in most movies and media.
Okay.
um, and which leads to the misconception that life insurance does not pay out
Hmm.
on. But if you're with here's something to consider though. If you're with a company and you're only with a company for like 2 or 3 years at a time before you move to another one, and so you
Hmm.
keep having to update your life insurance, that can cause issues. And so should it be, I mean,
Right, true.
I don't know. I'm a young strapping lad, 28 years of age. My life insurance premiums are so tiny.
Right.
Like I had some people calling me when I was like 24, and I could get like $1 million life insurance policy, and it was going to cost me like $200 a year,
Right.
because the likelihood of dying going to
Oh,
be so
I'm losing
small.
you again.
However, when you get up into the
Are you there?
you're coming in just fine for me.
Huh. You're all pixely and frozen.
Hello.
Hello. Are you
Hmm.
there? You're not moving
Hello.
on my
Hello.
screen. I can
Yeah.
hear you though. I can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, it could. We've got storms here.
Oh, that's
It
probably
was
what
it
it
was
is.
storming earlier.
We've got some weather, some crazy weather coming in for the
Yeah,
weekend.
it's still storming right now.
Okay. Well,
How do I look now?
I
No,
mean, weird. You're you look weird, but I can hear you. And it's a podcast, so we can
that's
hear
what's
you
important.
all as well. The YouTube video
Just
is an
throw
extra.
up some text on the YouTube video and
Right.
say storms, sad face. Um, but yeah, so I was thinking like some drastic stuff about how specific suicide insurance,
Right.
like
Oh. Hmm.
kind of dark to think about. But like
Right.
obviously you would not take it out. I think it would have to be taken out like on somebody else. Like, let me take out suicide insurance on my spouse because I
Right.
think not getting any better.
Uh-huh.
And or let me take out
But
suicide insurance on my that could get
I don't, it
hairy.
gets
Yeah.
kind of suspicious though.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
take out suicide insurance.
And they
I mean,
shot themselves allegedly.
yeah, it sounds like an Alfred Hitchcock plot to me. Just oh, she took out suicide insurance on her husband, and then, but no one seems to think he was depressed or had any reason to be.
But yet his head was blown off with a shotgun in his Ford
Right,
pickup.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he died overdose of painkillers,
Hmm.
but he wasn't on any prescriptions
Right.
and
Yeah.
never
It
had
was
any
just
issues with
kind of
narcotics
suspicious.
before. Yeah, no, that would be terrible. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to take it out on yourself
Hmm.
and then tell nobody.
Hmm. And if you're taking a, I don't think that would be viable. Like, who would want to have that as their business model to have to run suicide insurance for suicidal people? Like, you're
Yeah.
like, just no, that it doesn't make sense. Like,
You'd make no money because if they're taking out insurance, they're
exactly,
probably going to do it. And
exactly.
then you just
They're
have to
doing
keep
it.
paying people. You couldn't make enough. The whole scheme of insurance is that these people probably aren't going to die, so I'm going to charge them $100 a month,
Exactly. Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
here's to hoping they don't die, and
At least not for a while.
at least not forever. Like
Yeah.
like I never have to deal with them. They're going to go on to a different policy holder
Hmm.
eventually, and yet I made
Right.
$10,000 off of them.
Right. Yeah,
And
that's
that's
the
why
hope when you're
that's why
doing that.
insurance companies are so horrific to deal with, because they
Hmm.
don't want to pay whenever they are supposed to.
Hmm.
Is they want to make you jump through all the legal hoops, and
Right.
then go through even more hoops to like sue them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
To Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, their whole business model
Insurance
is we don't pay you
is
unless you make us,
predation.
for the
Yeah,
most part.
it's all predation.
Hmm.
Like that's why companies like Brian Lawn Car, the Texas Strong Arm, and the Texas Hammer exist to get money out of your insurance company
Right.
because they don't want to pay.
Unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, before we go off on that tangent, we're
Yeah,
because we so could. Just insurance is another topic unto itself.
write it down.
Right? You're the one keeping a list. You
I am keeping a list.
a meticulously kept list. I appreciate it. But it's as far as laws and such, that's one of the things I was looking up because some places it's legal to like euthanasia, I guess is like
Medically assisted suicide.
right, because back on animals, this is a it's a contradiction in ethical stances that we have that oh, are you there? You've frozen.
I, you did too.
Okay. I'll wait till you start moving and then okay, I see a little movement. It's glitchy. Oh, you're frozen again. Can you hear
Can you
me?
hear me?
I can
I can
hear
hear
you.
you loud and clear.
Okay.
Yeah. As
All
long as you
right.
can hear me, just keep going.
All right. Okay. So
I'll do it.
it's a moral contradiction,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying. That you have a dog who's 17 years old somehow and
Uh-huh.
in pain, can't walk, just is crapping itself, has dementia. Like if you turn a corner, they start screaming in terror
Yep.
because they've been left alone forever. That, and you take that dog to the vet and you say, no, I'm not going to put him down. I'm not going to put Spot down. He still has some life left in him. Everyone looks at you like you're a monster.
Yeah.
It's unethical to keep that dog alive. Why are you making it? Why are you prolonging that dog's misery? It's considered ethical to put an animal down when they have a terminal illness, when they're in chronic pain, when their quality of life is diminished to the point that they just aren't even a dog anymore, or a horse, or a cat, or whatever they are. They aren't living their best life. And it's ethical to euthanize them. You have a human who's in the same condition. Like my grandmother lived with Alzheimer's for the last 10 years of her life. I don't think she knew who anybody was. And it was unethical to put a human down who's in, and she was afraid all the time. Like you go to visit her, she'd tell my dad, like she'd be in tears that she didn't have any place to go. She didn't, and my dad would have to tell her every time, no, you're home. You have a room. He would walk her to her room and show her. Thing is, as soon as he left, she wouldn't remember that. She wouldn't know where she was again. Like, so she was always afraid, but you can't put someone down. You can't put a human down.
Right.
Someone who's got a terminal illness that causes them pain and they can't do anything. They can't live a human life. Their quality of life, non existent. All they have is suffering day after day after day. If you were to take them to the doctor and ask them to put put your mom down or something, that you're considered a monster for that, which is the complete
Right.
opposite of the ethics we have for non-human animals. Like animals, you're a monster if you allow them to continue suffering. Humans, you're a monster if you do not force them to continue suffering. So
Right.
so it's interesting to me that there are some countries where um euthanasia for humans is legal. And they've got passive and active euthanasia. Like
Okay.
here,
I was gonna say here I think here I did a little research too. I think here you have to the person who wants to die has to be in control of their own mind to
right.
in order to request it. Like that's the issue
Hmm.
because the
Or
your grandmother's example, I don't think would work in a lot of countries where they
Oh,
do have
right.
a suicide
Right. She couldn't unless
because
she had.
she is not able to
Oh,
request
hold on. You're just a
unless
bunch of
sign something
noise right now.
before.
I'm just getting half words out of you.
Good Lord.
I got that. Good Lord.
Hello, hello,
Hello. Hello.
hello.
Why we're just having technical. It's reminding me to check this light. Let's make sure it's not falling down, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
So
I'm hearing
there
you. Oh, you
once
try it
there
again.
once was a hero named Renok the Red. Okay. Um. So like in country, is it still coming in bad?
It is
You
coming in.
giggled.
I mean, a little bit. It's better than it was. Keep trying. We're good.
My goodness.
I
Um.
know it's frustrating.
Because I'm losing my train. I'm losing my train
I
of thought
know.
as we're going. Um.
Okay, we're talking about
So
countries where passive active euthanasia. It
yeah.
wouldn't
No.
work for my grandma.
Yeah. And so like it wouldn't work for your grandma. She is
You're breaking up again,
express
mother puss bucket.
autonomy.
Hmm. Like, yeah,
Each
if you
other.
if
I
you
mean,
were to
there's
come
nothing I
into
can
my
do.
room right now, you would
Yeah.
just see yourself on the screen, just frozen.
Yeah, you've like glitched a few times, but yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know what's up. Do we have anything else running
I
on
mean,
the
it looks all
internet?
fine on mine.
Or is there a game
I mean, just
downloading or anything?
my internet browser. No, nothing.
That's weird. It's got to be the storm. But all right.
You give me your thoughts. And so apparently I can't talk anymore.
Oh, no, you've got. Well, hopefully this is gonna clear up. Um,
Yeah. I mean, my thought was just that if you can hear me now,
yeah, yeah.
um, that, it's different from bringing a dog in to die.
Hmm.
Because if we bring our dog in to die and they're not able to say, no, I don't want it to die,
Right. We have to make the
your
decisions for
your
them.
grandmother, yeah. And so I don't know if there's any things you can sign nowadays in countries or states. I think there's only like 2 states here in the United States where assisted suicide is even close to being legal.
Hmm.
But uh, I feel like you'd have to sign something if
Hmm.
you lose your mind, like with Alzheimer's, because you'd be
Yeah.
afraid. Like you said, you'd be afraid of dying.
Hmm.
You'd be like, who are these doctors that are trying to kill me?
Right. Right.
Like you wouldn't. Yeah, sure, you're going to be just as scared when you go home,
Hmm.
but like it's rough in that
Yeah.
regard. But like if I have access to all my functions
Hmm.
and all of my mind, and I am just in pain every day from terminal cancer
Hmm.
or just like organ failure across the board, just from old age.
Right.
Pull a plug, homie.
Right. Right. And I think you can like you can have a non-resuscitation or no heroic acts thing that you sign with the hospital so that they
Right,
don't bring you back just to keep you as a vegetable. Like if you're going to
right,
be a vegetable, they just and that's passive assisted suicide. It's not really suicide, it's just letting you die without doing anything to stop it. You're just dying and they just let you. It's not the same thing as active assisted suicide where they inject you with something and you go just like a dog. Um, but then it's always conditional. It's not like you can just be like, the world sucks, doc. I would like to go now. And they're like, all right, well, give me your arm. Let's get you out of here.
you're
That
a you're a healthy 35-year-old man. Like,
right, right. That but that's so there are rules. It's not just anyone who wants to go. In most places that do it, you have to have a terminal illness, um, or some condition that has been deemed worthy of assisted suicide. And you have a, like Dr. Kevorkian, Dr. Jack Kevorkian, if anybody remembers him back in the 80s and 90s. Um, he invented a machine that was to help people commit suicide. And I think the first person he actually assisted was someone with Alzheimer's. And like when you have Alzheimer's, when you have the early stages of Alzheimer's, you do have a lot of clarity. You get a little foggy here and there. You have episodes of not really knowing where you are or what is going on. Um, because it hasn't gotten so bad. So I think at that point you can still make decisions for yourself. Like my grandma in the early days was able to still make some legal decisions um regarding her estate and all that. But after a point, no. But yeah, he helped someone with Alzheimer's. And with the machine, what all he did was hook them up pretty much. But they're the ones, like he'd give them the thing to push the button and inject themselves. Like he had two machines. One was injection, one was gas. Um, but he got into hot water because I mean, obviously that was a controversial thing that he was doing. I mean, this guy's whole career was controversial. If you look him up and read about his career, he was constantly butting heads with, he wanted to experiment on things like he wanted to use prisoners who were on death row for medical experiments if they agreed to it. And everyone was like, no. Like he actually, it's like he had a lot of things that from a detached perspective made sense, but people are more they have emotional responses to the experiments he wants to do that are for the betterment of humanity. But it's just like, you want to do what to prisoners? No, Dr. Kevorkian. You can't you can't do that. Well, they're gonna die anyway. but but yeah, so he got into some hot water as his suicide assistance program progressed. um he wasn't necessarily only killing terminally ill people is the is the problem. Like because that's what it started out as, and that's what it, he did a lot of that, people with cancer, people in pain. But and he was an advocate for, you really need to be getting psychiatric counseling for a while if you do this, but he kind of got lax on that. Like there were some people he allegedly helped commit suicide within 24 hours of them coming to him, and people who just,
they were just pressing the button
right. And so he wasn't actually
over
killing
again.
them, but it's more like if someone wanted to die and I said, "Here's a gun."
Give them a gun.
And I put it up to their head and put it in their hand and I'm like, "Okay, now all you got to do is pull the trigger." I mean, the suicide machine much cleaner and more humane than that, but it's the same basic, I guess, concept. And so then it's like, is it murder? He actually, I think, went to prison for murder, um, whichever degree of murder, even though what he was doing was just helping people check out who had already decided to do it. He didn't
Out
actually,
completely
yeah.
on my end.
Oh, I did? Okay.
Yeah. Who knows
Uh,
what this will look like in the audio file?
oh, I know. I'm hoping it records because it's recording on my end. And usually when there's a glitch on for you, if you're seeing me glitch, the recording isn't if I don't see me glitch. So hopefully it'll be all right. We'll see. This is the
Yeah,
first
no.
time we've had this issue on this
Yeah, no.
podcast.
Yeah, on that end, I also looked up, um, is it okay to shoot your own dog? Like
Mm,
medically assisted suicide back onto dogs and animal suicide, or
mm-hmm.
just euthanasia, the topic of ethical euthanasia. And yeah, it's absolutely okay to shoot your own dog.
Mm-hmm.
If you are out, like, you can just shoot your own dog.
Yeah, Old Yeller. I made
Old
that
Yeller.
I made that joke to my mom in the hospital because I'm an asshole. I was just like texting people, we're gonna have to old Yeller mom because or she'd always recover, but
Yeah.
until she didn't. But um yeah, it's like you can shoot your dog. You can shoot old Yeller because he's got the rabies.
Can't
But
shoot
if
your mom.
yeah, if your mom gets rabies, you can't. You can't shoot her. It's like, well, she
Yeah.
had rabies. Haven't you seen old Yeller? I had to put her down. She's my mom. I'll do it. Like, yeah,
Right. I mean,
no.
if you, I guess if you live out in the back country somewhere, because that's
Uh-huh.
really, I mean, I couldn't just where I live in Dallas, I couldn't just take my dog out back and just fire a
Oh
gunshot.
yeah, the people would call the cops just
People
because
will
they
call
heard
the
a
cops.
gunshot.
Yeah. And they'd be like, well, why'd you put the dog down? I was like, well, he was old.
Right. He
Like,
wasn't enjoying his life as much. I
yeah. He
determined it
ain't
was the humane thing.
he ain't moved or eaten in 3 days. Like,
Well, in horses, like
yeah, they shoot him right after the race. They
or
shoot him on the track. They bring the
right
tent
on
out
the
on the
track.
track
Hmm.
and just blow its brains in.
Yeah, like
And it's
uh,
considered ethical.
yeah, it's ethical. Like my uncle, his horse got hit by a train and he had to go shoot it and he loved that horse and it messed him up. But he did, he just shot it. You can't do that. Like if your buddy gets hit by a train and somehow lives, you can't shoot him. You have to wait for the ambulance to get
No,
there
no,
and all that. And they
dude,
have
I've
to
had to put down animals myself.
you've had
Like,
to?
yeah, no, I had to do that to a kitten.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, there was a kitten that my cat was pregnant, and then it decided to have its kittens in the dog pen,
Mm-hmm.
and my dog like thrashed all the kittens.
Oh
And like
no.
I went to go feed the dogs one like that day, and
Mm-hmm.
I just found a slaughter of kittens.
Oh man,
And
that's
there
awful.
there was one
Trigger
that was,
warning, folks.
yeah, trigger warning. Yeah. No, and there was three of them, there were four kittens, three of them were already dead,
Uh-huh.
and one of them had life endangering wounds, let me just put it that way,
Right.
and was still holding on to life. And I was like, sorry, bud. And I just took a big rock, and that's all I did
Oh
for him. Yeah,
jeez.
you gotta do it.
Because he wasn't gonna
It's
make
sitting there.
it. He was just
He's not gonna.
suffering.
He was
Just
Normandy Beach suffering. Let me just put
nothing
it
but
that way.
pain. Yeah, his whole
Yeah,
existence was pain. So it
yeah.
was a mercy killing.
It was a mercy killing,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. And yeah, so maybe that's the way that why I am the way I am now. But no, no, I mean, yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna call the vet.
Right.
The kitten would be dead by the time they got there,
Right.
and so I just did the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I just took a rock, and that's all you do. That's what I want somebody to do for me.
Right.
If
Right.
I'm sitting there with my lower half removed, and like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just put me out.
Yeah. I mean,
But yeah,
I
I
would
think,
want to go if I had nothing but pain. I'd
yeah,
want to go too. If I had Alzheimer's like my grandmother, I'd want to go. Like if I was diagnosed, there'd be a I guess a line in the sand beyond which I don't want to continue. Like if I don't know who you are, I don't want to be alive. Um, but I'd like to be able to go out with dignity, to have a party, invite everybody over to say goodbye and celebrate life, celebrate all of my relationships, and then go get in the Kevorkian machine and surrounded by my loved ones who I still know
peace
who they
out.
are.
Yeah,
I still know who all of you are. And I can genuinely express my love to you and my gratitude for the part you played in my life. And then I can go and I never have to forget who you are. I never have to live in fear. If I have a terminal illness, I don't have to just have an existence that's nothing but pain and wait for Matt Paul to walk in my room and put a rock on my head.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
and
No, you don't
for
want
which he
that.
would go to jail, like in this world.
Yeah, because I'm not going to jail for you, dog.
Right, right. You're just gonna
Yeah,
watch me
no,
suffer
I'm just
because
gonna watch you suffer.
unlike a kitten, they're not gonna let you
Do that.
terminate me.
No,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. And yeah, I think that ethical euthanasia should be legalized across the board
I do too.
because it's ridiculous.
Hmm.
It's ridiculous that somebody has to, quote, pull the plug and
Right.
face potential jail time to just put
Hmm.
somebody out of their misery.
Hmm. Oh,
Like,
there was another great movie. Just talking about pulling the plug. Um, what was it called? I think it was called One True Thing, about a family, and the mother has terminal cancer and just really wants to go. And it's like the husband has to wrestle with the ethics. Do I kill my wife? Like, and can I get away with it? And she wants him to. And that's what the whole movie is about. If I'm not getting movies mixed up, I think that was the film, One True Thing.
well, it was
Um,
absolutely a film, whether or not that was the name or not.
right, right, exactly. This I've seen this movie, whatever it was, but yeah, but I'm remembering that. Like that was really that's something we should have thought to watch before this podcast because it just brings all these issues that we're talking about into the forefront of that story, just the struggle with when do you like if ethical suicide were legal, where do you draw the line on it being ethical? Like if it were assisted suicide, I mean, like where is the line at which
The
it's
person has to ask
okay?
for it. The
Uh-huh.
person has to ask for it. That's where I
Hmm.
draw the line.
Well, yeah,
I'm I'm
absolutely,
I'm never going to
absolutely.
I'm not going to pull the plug on my wife just 'cause I think she's had enough.
Right,
She's
exactly.
she's got to verbalize it. She
Yeah,
has
if
to say it.
yeah, if she's begging you
Right.
to.
Not she doesn't even have to beg. She says it once, twice, three times. All
Mhm.
right, is this what you want? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Sign here if you're sure. Yes. And she knows her diagnosis. She
Mhm.
knows it's not getting better. Then yeah, like
Right,
let's go. But you can't make that decision for them
right, right, and
because I know that if I get diagnosed with a serious illness, I'll
mhm.
tell you one thing: I'm gonna fucking fight.
Right,
Like I'm gonna
right,
fight for a
as long
good
as you
minute.
can.
Yeah. But if it just gets to be like 10 years and I've been on a hospital bed for the last 10 years,
Yeah,
get me out of here.
right,
I'm ready for the next phase of life if there is one.
right. Let's see what else is out there. Like to die would be an awfully big adventure,
Right.
as Peter Pan said. But and again, not advocating for murder here, listeners. It's we're just talking
Ethics.
ethics and ideas, philosophy. This is not you should definitely murder your wife who's in pain. No, don't. You'll go to jail.
Yeah.
But in this country anyway, in the United States, you'll go to
It's not,
jail.
yeah. And, it's not necessarily legal worldwide either yet.
Oh, right.
There's one country in South America. I think it was, you mentioned Mexico earlier. It's Colombia.
Mexico, I think, is passive. Colombia, yeah, Colombia
Yeah.
was on. I have that written down.
Yeah. Colombia. And then Australia and like some other Eurasian countries have it legal to have medically assisted suicide by a professional.
Hmm.
And then there's a number of other, and then there's two states in the United States, and they were in the Midwest.
Uh-huh.
I think it was like, I think it was like Nevada.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know. But just only two states. Everywhere else, totally illegal.
Yeah.
And Germany has like legislation on the board,
Mm.
but it hasn't been regulated yet. Like it hasn't been passed yet.
Right.
They're
But they're
trying to get it legalized.
yeah, so they're seriously having that discussion in
Right.
Germany.
At this point. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I think it's a total of like 13 countries where it's legal to have a medical professional help you die.
Hmm. Yeah.
And in all of those countries, the person has to be in complete control of all their facilities,
Hmm.
or yeah, faculties.
And is it all contingent upon them being terminally ill to begin with, or
Yeah.
does
Hmm.
depression count as
Nope.
okay?
Depression does not, because depression is curable.
Right, that's what I was gonna say. Like hypothetically,
98 per 98
depression is
percent of
curable.
all, yeah, depression is curable with medication and or therapy.
Hmm.
And that's opinionated as well, as far as medication goes, at least. Is that
Right,
somebody being cured of depression, or is that somebody being numb to their emotions?
right. I
But that's a
mean,
whole nother podcast.
oh, it is. I mean, because like the antidepressants, they tried to put me on antidepressants at one point during the mama drama, and I accepted the prescription, but I never had it filled because to me it would have turned me into it cause more harm than good. And that's
Well,
kind of
and
it goes into forcing you to go on without quality of life. Not that I'm saying I think you should be able to have assisted suicide for depression. I didn't want that either. I
and not that if you're
I
on
didn't.
antidepressants that you don't have no quality of life either.
Right, exactly. It's like a personal, like it messes some things up that just I didn't want messed up, you know?
Right, but if you
Like
want to live and
right,
that's your only option is
right.
to just dope yourself up, then
Yeah.
by all
Yeah.
means,
And
especially when you're a kid,
mhm.
especially when you're a kid.
Oh yeah.
I have a good friend of mine that has, been on antidepressants on and off their whole life,
Uh-huh.
and they would likely not be here now if it wasn't for them, and they
Right.
quit them of their own volition like
Mhm.
3 years ago,
Yeah.
and are living a much better life now than they
Mhm.
ever would have imagined when they were 14, when they first got put on antidepressants.
Mhm.
And all of that potential would have just gone to waste.
Right. Right. And maybe do you think that's why um is that maybe what it comes down to? Like we don't want to let people die even when they're in pain because we can't let go of the idea that they have potential, that there's potential for something to get better or for them to um still have something to give to us? Or do you think it's largely religious, like thou shalt
I
not
think,
kill?
yes, I think it's much darker than any
Mm,
sort of compassion. I think it's
right,
much more dogmatic,
because
and
it's not
much more
compassionate. Hmm.
and then much more capitalistic,
Right.
because if a person
Oh,
dies, then
true.
that's one less person in the workforce,
Right. Or,
and one
it
less
costs
person that's,
money to be terminally ill. It's expensive to be terminally ill.
well,
It's
then
you don't have to pay
in
to be
that
dead.
case, well, yeah, and well, in that case, then that would advocate for capitalists to advocate for assisted suicide, if that were the case, because it's cheaper to kill them than it is to keep them.
Right. But you're making more money if you keep them alive, is what I'm saying. Like you're still
Yeah, it
getting money
stimulates
from
the
their
economy.
insurance
It stimulates the
if they're
economy a lot
alive.
more.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and so that's because like I just said, this friend of mine has been on antidepressants since they were 14,
Hmm.
and so they're funding the pharmaceutical industry by being on these antidepressants
Right.
for you know 16 years.
Hmm.
And it's, yeah, so I think the reasons for keeping people alive is a lot more dark than it is like compassionate, or
Right.
anything that I've said about wanting somebody to reach their potential.
Right.
Like, yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
true. I
much,
think you're right. I don't think
from
there's
a
any
societal stand,
compassion
in the
at
United States at
all in that.
least. Yeah, in the United States, in Texas at least, it's
Hmm.
much more drive the economy forward. You can't kill yourself, because then who's going to work at Starbucks?
Hmm.
Like, you can't kill
Hmm.
yourself, because then who's going to buy these prescriptions?
Right.
Who's
Yeah,
gonna
it's
who's gonna pay rent for the next 60 years of their life? Who's gonna pay into Social Security? Like if
mhm.
people start killing themselves, then who's gonna fund this economy? Who's gonna fund our wars? Like,
Right. Right. And I mean there's also the religious implications, like, oh,
which at
God
this
doesn't want you to die or you would have died already. God doesn't
right,
care about other animals, but humans,
yeah.
that's the
Well, if
thinking.
if God has a plan for me, wouldn't His plan for me include my suicide if I eventually do it?
Good point. Good point. Is God such a monster that God wants us to suffer just so that
Right?
we don't die? When it
Can
really,
can you go against God's plan?
right?
If God
Can
is
you
omnipotent,
physically go against God's plan? Is it possible?
right?
Good question.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, arguably, yeah, if you help someone check out, that was God's plan, right?
right.
I don't know.
That's what I was put on this earth for,
Right.
was to drop a rock on a kitten.
Oh my gosh. Right. Mercy killings. Man, like, and that used to be way more common, like what you had to do. Like, my great grandma would talk about stuff like that. Like, a
Yeah.
cat had a ton of kittens,
Hmm.
and like they couldn't keep them all. So they would go and take them to the river and drown them. Like, there was some poem my great grandma used to try to make my mother memorize when she was a little girl. Uh, where I don't remember the actual poem, but I remember kind of the story of the poem where it's about that, like, little girl raised on in a you know turn of the century uh home. Cat has a bunch of kittens, and the girl's grandma is like, all right, well, this one will have to drown, and because there's too many, so they
Good
have to go
God.
drown. And so then the little girl's mother has twins, and so the little girl turns to her grandma and is like, which one will we have to drown? Like, that's
Speaks
because,
volumes.
yeah. And I mean, and that's about, you can't afford to feed all those animals. You can't. It's considered, it's the thinking is what's more humane, like thinning out the deer population in deer season for hunters,
Hmm.
um is supposedly
Rather,
to stop them from
rather
starving to death.
starving to death. Yeah, because
Mhm.
we killed all the wolves, so we have to be the wolves
Right,
now.
right, exactly. We have to step in and do that job. um so, when again it comes to when we're looking at non-human animals, where it's a humanitarian thing. We're trying to be humane, whereas when it comes to humans,
We're as
being humane has
inhumane,
nothing to do with it.
nothing to do with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
right.
hindsight.
So, I mean, do you have any, like, what would be
I
your closing thoughts on this topic?
I mean, my my closing thoughts would be that if you as a person are considering suicide, call 988.
Absolutely.
It's the suicide hotline.
Or where, that's United States, or is that
That's the United
Texas?
States. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the United States. You can call that, and it's a 24/7. Speaks
Mm-hmm.
Spanish and English.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and then like I don't really have any words for anybody out there struggling with it. I'm not going to tell
Right.
you it gets better, as we previously discussed,
Right.
but I'm a strong believer in that you're in charge of your own destiny
Mm-hmm.
to a large degree, and if you want things to get better, you can take steps towards that.
Right.
That's the realistic option that I've come to realize throughout my own ideations and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, is that it's not the only option. It is
Mm-hmm.
a option, it's not the only one. And I would even go as far to say as it's not the best one. The best
Mm-hmm.
one would be to reframe your state of mind and look towards the future. Do what you can do to make things better,
Right.
and things will get better.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you dedicate yourself,
Right.
resolve, strengthen your resolve. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, that's my closing thoughts. I think, and then, we mentioned earlier, I think that, assisted euthanasia, humane euthanasia for terminally ill patients should be legal across the board. If any
Right.
legislation comes up, I am in any of my, you know, people that I can vote for on that ticket, that I'm voting for
Hmm.
them,
Oh yeah, I agree.
because absolutely, suicide should not be as stigmatized as it is. I don't think that
Hmm.
everybody should. I don't think suicide's for everybody, but
Right. Right.
for some people, it is the best and humane option.
Hmm. Yeah, if you're already terminal, or if your
Right.
quality of life, like you have a degenerative mental thing like Alzheimer's, I think it should be okay for that to be with medical professional assistance to check out. Um, and so those are your closing thoughts? You're
Absolutely.
done? All right. And and mine, I think very similar. I also think that assisted suicide for terminally ill people should be absolutely across the board legal. Um, but and when it comes to people who are struggling with suicidal thoughts, who are not terminally ill, who are just over it or depressed or in emotional pain, I would say I'm not going to tell. You said it too. I'm not going to tell you it gets better. It might not, but it absolutely will not get better if you kill yourself. It won't. If because we don't know. We don't know. The reason there are so many religions is because we don't know. We don't know what happens after your body dies. It could be nothing. And maybe that is better. The pain will end, but it won't get better if you check out, I guess. Like your life, your story, your experience,
Your potential's gone.
your potential is gone. That's a much better way of putting it. Like you're eliminating your potential. But I get it, like I get it. But I would say talk to someone. Don't let yourself be sneaky. Give yourself at least the opportunity to be talked out of it. Like call the suicide hotline. Call you can go to a psychiatric emergency room. Those exist. Um just tell a friend. It's awkward. It's going to be awkward for them, but get the poison out. Tell them. Sometimes talking about it is all it takes to reframe things, to get you out, to take the blinders off, Like that's what I did the one time I was going to do it, and I posted some because I didn't want people to know because I was serious. I wanted it to go. But I also couldn't stop thinking about what that was going to do to the people that I love. So I didn't want to, but I was going to, but I was like, okay, I'm going to give myself one chance to be talked out of this, to be stopped. And I just posted some pathetic little thing in a group chat on Facebook. I didn't say I'm in distress or anything. I was just like, well, yeah, I'm hanging out at home. If anybody wants to come by, I'm here. That's pretty much all I did. And that was the only chance I gave myself. And fortunately for me, I was just about to do it, and there was a knock on my door, and two people came in, and they thought that my little note was a little bit weird. And so they were worried. And they said, "So, how are you doing?" And I just let it out. I just started crying, like I told them. And then suddenly there were people on my side, Like I wasn't alone anymore. The blinders came off, and suddenly I started seeing other possible roads to take before I committed suicide. So that's my closing thought would be if you're going to do it, give yourself a chance to not do it. Tell someone, even if you think nobody wants to hear it or nobody's going to take you seriously, let someone know that you're in pain. and see if that doesn't open up some roads. There definitely, again, disclaimer, we are not advocating for suicide on this podcast. For just, you don't like life, go blow your brains out. We're not advocating for that. I think we are advocating for um, voting for laws and politicians who are in favor of laws that will help you go out with dignity if you're going to go out anyway, if you're terminally ill. But that's pretty much, those are my closing thoughts. I feel like
Heavy topic.
it is very heavy topic.
Heaviest. We were talking about this topic for weeks about
Right.
how this was the first one that it's gonna get heavy
Uh-huh.
because this is something that any of our listeners could be affected by
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that. This is the first one that has a real life bearing on people's lives
Right.
because all of us struggle with this. Everybody's thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who says they haven't, they're lying.
Right. Even if you
Like
just kind of like
passing thought,
yeah, yeah, it's still there.
it's
You
still
still
there.
are intelligent enough of an animal that you know it's a possibility. It's something you could do.
And so yeah, so thanks for hanging with us if you've hung this far.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
for sure. And next week, next week,
next
next
week.
week is there an afterlife? So
So yeah, we're just flowing right into this, and that was absolutely planned.
Yeah.
During the planning meeting, we saw our topic lineup, and then we decided on the order in which the topics would go, and we're like, huh,
Right, those kind of line up
yeah,
nicely.
let's do suicide, and then the afterlife the next week.
Right. And then, just a couple weeks after we were like defining God,
Yeah,
like, yeah, we're going in a reasonable order.
yeah, some light topics for your lunch break.
Right. Yeah, we
Uh,
don't do light topics. Light
yeah,
topics are for wusses.
yeah.
But I mean, that should be, I don't think we'll have to put a disclaimer on is there an afterlife?
No, I think this might be the only one we have to put a disclaimer on.
Right. At least for this the year we planned out.
Yeah, check us out next year where every episode has a disclaimer.
Right? We just get so deep, nobody can stand it. We drive people
Or
to
just
suicide.
straight controversial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
I'm
yeah,
all about it. I'm not afraid of being controversial. I think I mean that's how you address a topic honestly. You have to be willing to upset people.
yeah. I mean, what do you want from me? I'm a straight white male. Like I'm a straight cis white male. Everything that comes out of my mouth is controversial.
If you say so.
Yeah,
About the controversial, I believe you about the rest.
yeah, right. Yeah. Are you trying to argue with me? No.
Nah, not at all. Not at all. All right. Well, I guess we'll be back next week. Well, we will. We'll be back next week.
Yeah.
With Is There an Afterlife? This has been Autodidactica. If you want to stalk us online, Matt's got a band, My Perfect End.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
Allegedly.
hopefully he'll have a new band called Terminal Apathy.
Terminal apathy. Dude, that's such a good band
It
name.
really is. Um, and if you want to stalk me, please do on in the cyber realms, not in the physical realms. But you can pretty much find all of my stuff at my author website, glensladeclarkjr.com. You can find links to all of my novels and my short fiction. You can find my YouTube channel, and all the Autodidactica episodes are linked there as well if you want to check out our backlog. Um, and yeah, if you like Autodidactica, share, like, subscribe, whatever you can do to help us keep going because we enjoy doing this.
Indeed.
And if you enjoy us doing this, we appreciate you. We appreciate you being here. So I guess until next week,
Till next time.
have a good one.